Welcome everyone to History Happy Hour, Guide.Engage.Mobilize, High School Internship and Exhibition. My name is Emily Shivers. I'm the Curator of Education here at the Idaho State Museum, guest moderating for Allison tonight for this event. So thank you so much for joining us. The Idaho State Historical Society, including the Idaho State Museum, the Idaho State Archives, the State Historic Preservation Office, and the Old Idaho Penitentiary and Historic Sites are dedicated to preserving and promoting Idaho history through programming like tonight and on-site visits. In addition to being open for visitors, we're also offering a variety of virtual and off-site resources. And to find out more about those, what we're offering on and off-site, please visit our website at history.idaho.gov. I want you to just pause for a moment and think with me about your high school experience. What do you remember? Maybe it's that one major game you played in, or that magical dance at prom with a special someone. It could be hanging out with friends, or the dread of finals as you met with your study group in the library. Now imagine all of this is taken away. You're disconnected from everything in your world, being torn from your classroom, separated from your friends, and missing out on prom, graduation, sporting events, and even those dreaded study sessions that you took for granted. The memories that you carry with you from your formative high school years will not be similar to those of Generation Z. But their experiences weren't all bad. Connecting with one another comes in different forms, and Gen Z students are proof of that, from finding ways to make each other laugh, maybe through silly memes and GIFs and GIFs, to showering strangers with random acts of kindness. This generation found ways to rise and thrive under seemingly impossible social situations. So tonight's History Happy Hour actually transforms into Happy History Hour to hear from the museum's Guide, Engage, and Mobilize, or GEM for short, high school interns about their museum internship this year and the exhibition that they created titled Coming of Age in a Pandemic, which is currently on display here at the museum. So for a little bit of background about the GEM program, it launched in 2019 and was created to reach high school students at the museum, providing them with opportunities for skill development and real-world professional experiences to help those students prepare for college or career. Before the pandemic, students worked with family audiences, creating and facilitating hands-on activities in the museum. The pandemic did shift our focus, as it did with a lot of people, and we went to a virtual model for 2020, where we were able to discuss current events with the students, hear from their perspectives, and also hear from guest speakers from around the agency about potential career opportunities within the field. In 2021, the group worked together to create an exhibit and design an on-site event for their peers, which we're titling Teen Takeover, which will happen in a couple of weeks on August 14th here at the museum. So we hope to see you all there. As we get ready to meet our panelists and start this discussion, let's start with a question for you all and get your fingers ready to type and moving. So we're gonna ask that you click on the chat icon at the bottom of your screen and share with me and the panelists, where are you joining us from? We're hoping maybe there's some people outside of the Treasure Valley, maybe even outside of the state of Idaho. We want to hear from you, so go ahead at this time and type those answers into the chat bar. See where people are coming from. Awesome. See them starting to roll in. I think most panelists, or most of our attendees, are from Idaho within the state Boise Meridian. Awesome. So I also want to make sure you're aware this chat bar is where you are going to be able to ask our panelists questions throughout the event tonight. So if you have any questions that come up or you want to know more about anything, please feel free to use that chat box and type them in there, and I'll do my best to get all of those questions answered tonight from our panelists. So please use that chat bar. All right, so thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for being a part of tonight. So as a reminder, again, please use the chat bar, but let's get started with our panel and hear from our panelists. So our panelists this evening are members of the 2021, and some of them were 2020 GEM High School interns. And tonight we have Emma, as well as Audrey and Nicholas joining us. So you'll hear from all three of those GEM students tonight. So thank you all for being here tonight. So to get started, the first question, you guys all spent about 6 months researching, writing, and preparing for this exhibition. And I want to hear from you. Can you tell us more about the exhibit and what you were hoping to accomplish or achieve? And I'll start first. Audrey, can we hear from you first?
Yeah, so the exhibit basically is all 11 GEM interns were split into groups, and we each covered different topics and wrote panels like the one behind us about US events, education, community, creativity, all of those subjects, and we put them into this exhibit. And so what we kind of want to do is bridge those generational gaps in understanding. So by providing this unique narrative of Gen Z, we can make those connections transgenerationally and speak with people like baby boomers and millennials, like what did you go through? This is what Gen Z went through. And this is our experience through the pandemic. So by communicating that, we can connect with our audience and kind of build more understanding and empathy for everyone else's experience as well.
Awesome, thank you so much. It's really interesting to think about, the various generations and how they experienced the pandemic. So it's an interesting perspective. What about you, Nicholas? What do you think, what were you hoping to accomplish or achieve through this exhibit?
So I'm in a similar boat. I was hoping to accomplish transgenerationally, try and focus on trying to show older generations or newer generations what happened. I worked on a panel of education. I worked on the education panel, so I try to display and show to everyone how COVID-19 affected schools and how we all learn to do with it.
Great, thank you. And Emma, what about you? Very similar ideas, or what did you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, I had some pretty similar goals of being able to kind of have conversations with people of all different ages and kind of tell the story of the pandemic through the lens of Gen Z, and also be able to hopefully draw more Gen Z audiences to the museum to be able to come and empathize with the experiences that we wrote about.
Great, thank you. I know I had the privilege of working with these students through this process and kind of answering their questions and helping to guide along with a lot of other museum staff members. And it was really fascinating to hear their perspectives and what they hope to achieve. So they set up all of the goals and outcomes for the exhibit from the get-go. Very cool to see. So moving on to kind of thinking about, as you were designing and creating the exhibit, what challenges and roadblocks that you faced during that process, and how did you overcome those? So Emma, can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges that I remember was being able to write in a way that portrayed the experience that Gen Z had during the pandemic, but that was also accessible to all audiences. And so writing from the perspective of Gen Z, but in a way that would appeal to the variety of people that come to the museum and that would see this exhibit.
Yeah, one of the challenges that I faced was the word count. We had to write 200 words that would ultimately end up being chopped down to 150. So trying to fit in an entire year into 150 words is kind of difficult.
Great. And Audrey, what about you? What did you find challenging and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I agree with everything that you guys said. I would say taking on so many different roles throughout this process was really interesting and something I had never done before. We source the images, we write the text, we research, we installed this. It was a very personal experience trying to go through all of these different roles. And I think that was really challenging, but what helped me overcome it was collaborating with my peers and just being in this environment where we're all kind of on the same level. And everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, and so we can learn from each other and ultimately create the best exhibit.
Yeah, word count. That's always the biggest challenge. I like how you put fitting a whole entire year basically into less than 200 words. It's not easy, and you guys did it really well. So I agree that you overcame those challenges and created a really awesome final product. And I hope our audience, if they haven't seen it, come to the museum, check it out, and you can actually see a piece of it right behind those GEM students right now. So the next kind of questions, transitioning away a little bit from the exhibit, but just the program in general and the GEM program that you've been participating in and the internship. So how do you think this program will help you in your future, whether your plans be going to college or career? And Audrey, do you want to tell us a little bit about that from your perspective?
Yeah, so for the GEM internship, we've done a lot of professionally collaborating, and I think that's really helpful for college, especially for me when I want to go pursue internships and network professionally with people like my professors who could have an impact on my future. I think this internship has really showed me what careers in history look like and how people interact on this professional level. So I think in the future, I'll definitely use this as a professional experience to kind of boost my experience in gaining internships and career knowledge.
Cool. That's awesome. Awesome to hear that you're getting something out of this experience and see how it can be applicable to your future. What about you, Emma? What do you think about the program and how it might help you in your future?
Yeah, so I really hope to go into a field like journalism, possibly history, something that would involve a lot of research and writing. And so the research and writing skills that I've been able to gain from the GEM program, especially during this exhibit creation, will certainly be really helpful and when I transition to a career that's heavily focused on research and professional writing.
Emma, do you have anything in mind as far as what you want to do with research and writing? Any like dream careers or dream jobs?
I'd love to be like a press secretary or work for a major daily as a political journalist.
Cool. That's awesome. I love that you're already thinking that far out, and I think you can do it. Hopefully these skills have helped you get to that point. And then finally, Nicholas, what do you think about the skills you've learned and how they might help you in your future?
I plan to go into the field of informational technologies, where we'll be collaborating a lot. And that was one of my major takeaways from this internship was I learned how to collaborate with people, how to work with my peers, how to incorporate everybody, how to do my part, and work along with the people in my group.
Great. Yeah, I would say that the internship, I think you would all agree, has been very collaborative. And while there's some projects that are individual, it's really about the team and making sure every part of the team gets the job done. So I think that's a great skill for your future as you, whether it be IT or writing and research or wherever it is you want to go. Those are really helpful skills. All right. Well, I have another question for you all I wanted to ask. Was there anything that was surprising to you as you were going through the process, something you didn't expect to happen, or maybe were pleasantly surprised? And feel free, any of you, if you have a question or an instance that comes into mind, feel free to share that with the group.
I think that I was most surprised at kind of how quickly the exhibit came together. So when we looked at it like theoretically about, okay, we're going to source images and write this text, it felt like something that would take like years, like a really long process. But being able to work with the team and just kind of get things done and in just a few meetings, we had all our images sourced and things like that. That was just really impressive and really kind of showed me the value of teamwork and how things can really get done when everyone does their part.
Awesome. Did any of you else have anything that was surprising? No. You expected everything that came your way.
I mean, I would have to say again, when I answered about the most interesting, I just didn't know how many things I would have to do for this exhibit to come to life. You know, I understand that there are so many roles and so many different people that work in a museum to build things like this. And it was so interesting because we got to taste all of those different careers, writing and researching and sourcing images and designing and constructing and putting them up. I just think that was so interesting and really surprising because I didn't really know what we were going to get to do in this internship when you said we're going to create an exhibit, but I'm so glad that we got to do so much and we were so involved in the process.
Great. Thank you. About the exhibit and all of the research that you did and work that went into the final product, were there any stories or pieces of research or anything, even images that stood out to you or that were your favorite stories to learn about or hear about from this experience?
Yeah, an interesting story. There was a high school that held their graduation in an outdoor theater, a drive-in theater, up in Twin Falls. And I thought that was pretty interesting, pretty cool.
What about you, Emma? Did you have any stories that you felt like were really interesting?
I really liked the Free Flower project story about it was really inspiring and nice to see those young boys deciding to just get together with their mom and take the hobby they developed of gardening through the pandemic and use it so they weren't just enjoying it themselves, but also were able to make so many community members happy.
Awesome. Yeah, I think actually that story, the image for that story is right behind you, right next to your head. So the boys and their mom, we were able to get the photo of, like you said, them really doing a kind thing for their community, which is really cool to see. Audrey, did you have a favorite story or a thing that you learned through this project?
I really liked finding pictures for my panel, which was US events. And there was this picture of a grocery store aisle and there were just shelves completely empty. And I think that was so impactful and so interesting to me because we're covering this whole entire year. And it's just crazy to think about a bunch of teens writing text about this serious event that happened that we experienced. So I think that was really interesting to come to this revelation. Like, this is what we're talking about here.
Great. Thanks. So, thinking you mentioned seeing empty shelves and photographs. I want to hear more about your pandemic experience, if you're okay sharing. How did you all spend your time during the pandemic, especially during those early times of lockdown? So does anyone feel comfortable sharing their experience?
Yeah, well, I spent a lot of time learning how to knit. Unfortunately, it was summertime, so I had a lot of knitted clothing that I couldn't use for quite some time. But it was hard. I wasn't able to see my 3-year-old nephew for almost 9 months, except for from over 6 feet apart, which was just really difficult. But I think it also was a really valuable opportunity to kind of slow down and think about what was really important to me outside of just academics or extracurriculars, and kind of who I am, I guess, not to be cliche, outside of the things that teenagers do every day and how much we dedicate ourselves to school and things like that. So I think it was a valuable experience, but it was also really difficult.
Do any of Audrey or Nicholas, do you feel comfortable sharing about your experience?
Yeah, it really helped me sit down and think about what I really want to do when I get older and what I need to do to get there.
I would agree with that too, because I think I spent a lot of time reflecting on, what should I do with my day? I can't go anywhere. And so my family and I spent a lot of time together, and we did things like painted rocks and cooked and did some art. And I think it was great because it felt good to be together in our household while being apart from the rest of the world. But at least I had this little bubble of creativity and hope throughout the pandemic. I really enjoyed that.
It's interesting you mentioned some of your experiences. One of my favorite parts of the exhibit that you guys helped to create as well was the interactive component. Emma, can you tell us a little bit about Corkboard Interactive is and what the intention is of that interactive piece?
Yeah, so basically we took a bunch of cork boards, and on the day that we opened the exhibit, we put them out on easels on top of tables, and we had slips of paper just on the tables with markers, and we asked people to write down their experiences from the pandemic and their positive experiences and things that taught them kind of resilience and how they worked through the pandemic, and stick them up on the cork boards. And so we were able to look at a lot of community members' experiences and things they gained from the pandemic. And that was just really interesting and inspiring to see how everyone spent their time similarly, or how people just found ways to pass the time, and the amount of personal development people were able to do and skills people could learn during this massive amount of time to themselves.
And I feel like already we've filled up corkboards and had to take some of them down so that there was space to add more. And the stories and hearing people's experiences or seeing, I guess, people's experiences written on the corkboard has been really moving and amazing to see what positive things have come out of the pandemic. So I just want to say, on behalf of the education team and the museum, it was such a really fun and meaningful interactive to include in your exhibit. So that was really awesome that you guys thought of that and brainstormed that. So just a quick reminder for everyone, if you do have questions, just remember that chat bar down at the bottom. Please feel free to type any questions that you have for our panelists tonight, anything from the exhibit to their program, and any questions that you have for these 3 students. We'd love to hear them, and I can do my best to get them asked. So what my next question for you guys is, thinking about the pandemic and all that you've been through, and your friends and everyone have been through, what do you feel like will be the biggest impact from the pandemic on your generation? Does anyone have an answer to that question? And it's a big one. It's a doozy.
Well, I think from doing the US events poster, I think we gained kind of the sense of awareness of who is around us and what to do in this pandemic. We became more socially and politically aware, and so I think that's something that's going to carry throughout our generation.
Anything to add to that, Nicholas? No.
I mean, I definitely agree with Audrey. Her and I worked on the US events panel together, actually. So I think that our generation has definitely gained a sense of awareness in like a political sense for sure, and also just in like an interpersonal sense. We all spent a lot of time on social media and kind of just learning more about each other, which seems counterintuitive, but we had so much more time without school to just talk to people, even if we couldn't see them in person. So I think that kind of connectedness between friendships and those relationships will definitely carry in a way that it may not have for high schoolers older than us.
Great. Thank you so much for answering those questions. I have one more, and this is an audience member question. So thinking about this experience and the program that you've been participating in and your experience creating the exhibit, do you feel like this has impacted or helped you in your high school experience currently? And if so, in what ways? So if anyone has an answer to that, feel free to chime in.
I think that this program has definitely taught some really great research skills that I've been able to carry into a lot of my classes, especially looking at like AP classes and things that come with junior and senior year, being able to research for things like college essays, or a lot of papers come with junior and senior year. So that's just been a really valuable skill, being able to learn those skills in an environment that I also really enjoy, and then carry that into things like homework and term papers, that kind of thing. So that's been really helpful.
Yeah, like she was saying, the literacy and writing skills. I'm going into my sophomore year next year, so I'm looking forward to using those to my advantage.
Yeah, I would agree.
Awesome. That's great to hear that. Hopefully, as I mentioned earlier, the point of the program was to help kind of prepare students for college and career, but also help them in their current schooling and prepare for whatever's next, but also help them with whatever they're doing it while they're in the program, whether it be, 9th through 12th grade, which is what this program serves. So I do have one last final question that I wanted to ask each and every one of you before we say goodbye for the night. And this last question is for everyone. So what role do you think museums should play in their communities as we look at this exhibit, reflecting and thinking about the past year? What role do you think the museum or a museum should play in their communities? And I'll start with Nicholas. What do you think?
I really think that they should provide valuable information about the area to everyone, to people who are visiting or people who currently live there, to all generations, old or new.
Great. So thinking about audience, I love that perspective. Emma, what about you? What role do you think museums should play in their communities?
Yeah, I think that museums, similar to Nicholas, I think museums should provide educational resources and information to anyone of any background visiting the community or living in that community. Because even if you live somewhere your whole life, if you haven't put effort into it, sometimes you may not know the history of the area you're in. I think that can be really valuable for all kinds of reasons. And so I think that it's important for museums to run and be able to provide this education to the people around them.
Great. I think that's a great point. You could live somewhere your whole life and never actually know all of the history about it. And so there's always more to learn about the community that you live in. And I think that that's an interesting perspective. So what about you, Audrey? What do you think?
I agree museums serve to educate, but on a more personal level, I think even our exhibit serves to foster connections within the community. I think museums educate, but they also tell stories and make people feel heard. So I think within the community, representing all of these different stories and people and artifacts in the museum is really important to preserve a sense of community and further connect with future generations and people all across this state and community.
I love that perspective too, thinking about how we can come together. And I think that this exhibit is a perfect example of you all reaching out into the community and seeing what people were able to do, how they came together, and not just thinking about the negative aspects of the pandemic, but also focusing on those positive things that came out of this experience. So that is all of our questions. I want to personally thank these 3 students that are sitting here on the panel, but also mention that there are a total of 11 students in the GEM program that worked on this exhibit and that have been a part of the GEM internship. And so thank all of them because they're amazing young students that I know have really bright futures. And I've loved working with them this year. And I'm looking very forward to the team takeover in a few weeks on August 14th here at the museum. So thank you, Audrey and Nicholas and Emma for your time tonight. So the Idaho State Historical Society and Museum are committed to providing opportunities like this to share with you at home or at one of the Idaho State Historical Society's sites. So one way that we do that is finding out more about you and what you're interested in. So in the chat, we will include a link to a survey from the Idaho State Museum. And please fill it out to let us know what you are interested in learning more about and what programs you'd like to see. And you will also get a follow-up email that includes this link. So if you don't have time to do it right now, please take time to do it later after the program ends. So for up-to-date information about other events and how to become a member or to make an online donation to the Idaho State Historical Society, please visit our website, history.idaho.gov, or stay up to date on our social media pages. Follow and like and subscribe, please. And we hope to see you at one of our Idaho State Historical Society sites very soon. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for participating. And thanks again to our panelists. Have a great night.